Hello and welcome. Today, I kind of want to talk about one of the things that I don't feel people always understand about me. And I think, without getting too explicit, I like to sometimes explore different states of consciousness. And that sort of like feeling of believing in some different set of circumstances around a specific perspective. The thing about that is that we're all doing it at any point in time. It just typically is centered on the self. And when we remove the self from the equation and try to examine sort of the bigger picture of what we are within that system, well, I think, to be honest, without getting too technical or anything, the easy way to say it is I consider myself to be something of a psychonaut. And that's not necessarily limited just to my, well, advocacy of recreational fun, but it also gets down to what exactly it means to be a person who has free will in a world that, we're run by physics and it must be determined. But also, there is no greater power in the world because, everything we see is the result of what people have made. So people must be the creators of society, even though at times society feels greater than ourselves. But our place within society is so frequently defined by our own internal expectations of what it means to be a productive member of society that sometimes we limit our self-evaluation. And I think in my own experience, there's a little bit of a funny irony that, here on StickyBasket, we like to do things multiple times, whether it's a Dark Souls boss or Calculus 2, 3 times on that one, or, even with my higher education, this is the 3rd time I've been to college. And, well, I don't think I can just jump around in my own life like that, especially when I'm jumping around with such... There are some really sort of hard parts to remember around in my life, and it frustrates me because sometimes I wish I could power through, because that's where the best sort of like memories are like those moments of pure ignorance where I forgot everything wrong with myself, trying to find answers in a world that I felt like I knew exactly where I fit. And it was not anywhere near where I wanted to be, but I was certain that it was what the world wanted. And, well, we talk about the Matrix on here a lot, conservatives love trans people, and you can tell because they took red pill from there. They even call liberals woke, which, I thought if you take the red pill, you're woke, but anyway, far be it from me to try and understand conservative logic. I'm just the trans veteran, but not just any trans veteran. I'm a little bit of a special one. And not just for being a trans veteran, but because, well, I think there are sometimes times in my life where people tell me warnings and I just kind of ignore it. As a younger kid, I, at 18 took up smoking thinking, well, I'll never get addicted to this. And then after I tried quitting, I realized, oh, wait, that's not how that works. And another movie, kind of like The Matrix, that gets into some of what we're going to try and do today is, it's from like the 1980s. It's called Somewhere in Time, and it's got, I think, Jane Seymour and, is it Christopher Reeves? And this gentleman attends like a play or something, and older lady approaches him and says, "Come find me." And so he goes through this entire sequence and goes back in time and finds the older lady as a young lady, and they fall in love and have this experience together, and then he's ripped out of the experience. And in there, the way he's able to go back in time is by hypnotizing himself. And so I think in a lot of that sort of cognitive work, they do counting. And so instead of trying to jump around, we'll just simply count to when the funny part is. Because, you know, believe me, I think it's worth it. And, well, I am now 32, and a year ago, I liberated myself from the paradox of freedom and democracy. I finally let go of that part of me that felt like I had to be a good American, and I just let myself start being the person I wanted to be, independent of what it means to be an American, because freedom and democracy can't be held together, because to subject oneself to the will of the people is to remove one's own individual, nature. And I think I don't really give a shit what the president says. I mean, last year, the guy says, now I'm a biological woman, which is weird, because, being born into the body of a trans woman and then having everyone go, hey, aren't you just, a regular woman? And it's like, no, you have to understand, being a trans woman, I'm a little bit different. But then you got dipshits like Matt Walsh asking, what is a woman? And it's like, I don't know, do we listen to fucking idiots when we try and find answers to the world? Because that guy is, I don't know. I'm not gonna listen to a guy that looks like that and talks like that about what it means to be masculine, because he projects insecurity and a lack of education and sort of, I don't know. It's very, anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. And we're trying to go back in time. So 2 years ago, that's when I took back my writing style from the military. In the military, they teach us to write in all capital letters. And with that style of writing, it sort of makes everything come out flat. Everything's in caps lock. And so after I started expressing myself through writing, I was able to find acting, and then in acting, I had an opportunity to do a project that wound up with me reigniting my love of expressing myself here on StickyBasket. Because my normal writing style, I just go. It's a lot like when I roller skate. And sometimes in this glorious and obviously fair system of capitalism, the words that come out make sense, and it thrills me. 3 years ago, I was getting out of the military, and I didn't ever want to think about the military again, or the dreams I had of serving in the military, because I knew it would never be a possibility for me. And for the 6 years prior, I had believed nothing more than that I would be able to serve for that amount of time. 4 years ago, I wished I could live in hell forever, because I was being the best at what I did. I was on the operations watch floor as a Satcom watch officer, and even though I had faced some difficulty coming out as trans, I was going to receive treatment when I got sent to the US, so I was excited for that. I actually re-enlisted that year under the impression that I'd be staying in for a while. And June of that year, I came to the US and celebrated my first Pride. And I think June of that year, that would have been 2022, we were having the Kid Rock, Dylan Mulvaney issues going on in the world. So I felt a little bit ostracized from the country, in that I was supposed to be receiving treatment, and yet it felt as though a large portion of the population had no concern for my well-being. And as the year progressed, that would only sort of exacerbate. And things did get better. I had at least some friends to reach out to and connect with and support me through those times, but we'll just go further. 5 years ago, I learned what it meant to love what I do, because I had been appointed to the work center supervisor over my satellite, and I was super excited because I was gonna change things. I got the old satellite decommissioned. I set up plans for the installation of our new antenna. Sorry, I said satellite, I meant antenna. It's strategic SHF, fun stuff. And then during a sort of Sailor of the Year thing, I learned that the rules had shifted to allow trans people in the military, which was exciting for me because I've always been, you know, aware that I'm trans. It's just that for a long time I felt uncomfortable with where I was at. And that was the first time in my life where I had the independence and the confidence in who I was as a person that I felt comfortable finally exploring that part of me. And things didn't always hold up the best, and I had a bit of a bad end of the year, but if we just keep going back, we can go ahead and ignore that, because 6 years ago, I realized what my job in the Navy was gonna be, and yeah, in 2020, there was a very high-profile case of someone being attacked with U.S. weapons, and I don't really want to talk about it here because that's for my therapist to deal with. But that time frame also was right around when I started the StickyBasket YouTube channel, and you know, after making my Skyrim Souls 2 video, I go ahead and drop that in the work group chat and say, any of y'all hear about StickyBasket? Word on the street is this is the next PewDiePie right in the making. I liked PewDiePie. PewDiePie and I actually have a little bit, I don't know. I like a lot of YouTubers. Actually, pretty much every YouTuber. Actually, it's pretty much all I watch because I grew up with basic cable. So like I would watch on like the Discovery Channel, that Alaskan gold rush or whatever. And then people would be mining all this gold, and I'd be looking at Parker Schnabel, that guy. He was about the same age as me, and then I saw him make $1 million, and I thought to myself, damn, if only I could be making $1 million, that would be, you know, because in those years, if only I had the money to solve all my problems, but the military was gonna do that for me. And from StickyBasket, it was a good sort of way for me to build community with the people I was around, because just talking with them about the things that I was interested in got them talking about the things they were interested in, and then we all kind of became friends with one another, even through, that would have been the year of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was, whew, we made it pretty far. 7 years ago, I was gonna be in hell forever because I was in Great Lakes and I was the holds leader there, and I just failed my second class swim test because, you know, second class swim test. I was a third class at the time, you know. I hadn't made second class yet. I had to wait until I was gonna be out in the fleet doing my work out there to make second class. And I wound up getting orders to Fort Gordon for strategic SHF. And I was really excited. I met some first classes down there that were really nice, and they inspired me in a lot of ways. Shout out to Nate Dogg for all those times in Warzone where, you know, every time you play Verdansk, you know it's gonna be a prison drop. You just gotta drop in the prison because this is the one where prison drop is gonna be the victory, you know? You just know it is, and if you gamble on it every time, those times you're right and you get killed early on in the match and never get to see what would have happened if you had actually been good at the game, become that much more fun. And that was a good time. From there, I went to Bahrain at the end of the year. So 8 years ago, that would have been the year I joined the military. I did a quarter of mushrooms, which is about 7 grams, and had one of the most intense trips of my life. And I think some of my religious trauma from my youth sort of came back, and I found myself standing before something that felt like a higher authority. But now I recognize it as like, just a manifestation of one's own guilt and like the fractured elements of a closeted soul finally coming to reckon with oneself of, what are you even doing here? And after that, I joined the military. So when everyone in the military was talking about, oh, I joined for the education benefits or for the travel or because I want to serve my country, I was like, I had a wild experience that led me to the military, because I think at the time I was 24, and so I had kind of become jaded with the adult world. But we'll get into that. We can go back a little bit further, because the Navy is where I started to learn formal electronics. But before the Navy, we have 9 years ago, I was working as a janitor and just cleaning buildings. And I worked with my brother, and there was one guy that ran the company, and we just kind of cleaned buildings, and we made a little bit of money, and it was working nights. And for me, it just felt miserable, because I remember all those times as a kid being told when I grow up I could do anything I want. And I don't know if I have many gifted kids in my audience, but the former gifted kids, I'm sure you all found me. Because that feeling of absent pride that becomes over time when you go from being a gifted kid to not gifted and not a kid. The heart cries for the ghost of a shadow that you can't ask for because it has to be given freely. And so, anyway, 10 years ago, I was trying to pick up the pieces of a pretty broken life, because I felt as if my entire environment had kind of like misled me in a certain way. And so anyway, I picked up a job at 7-Eleven, and then after working there for enough time, the janitor that came and did the floors offered me a job, and I passed it on to my brother so he could get a job there. And after I left 7-Eleven, I was 5 minutes late, and the guy goes, "Oh, this is unacceptable. They can't be showing up 5 minutes late." And I was, "Yeah, you're right. Don't schedule me anymore. Watch me not show up, because I'm done. I'm not going to be treated like this when I'm working 60-hour weeks. 10 hours, 6 nights a week." I was making decent money for myself, but again, it's 7-Eleven, so it felt like just incredibly taxing on my body. And again, going from that, you could be anything you want, to, well, stocking the fridges at 7-Eleven isn't too bad. But we're not even to, the part that led me to 7-Eleven, because 11 years ago, my life kind of fell apart. I had been working at a tool shop, and I had been working on the freight crew, and then I got shifted to the mornings, where I was working 5 days a week for 4 hours a day. And I was like, well, I was making more money at 3 nights a week at 8 hours and doing community college at the same time. I felt not challenged well enough, because I knew what it was like to work in the real world. So college, reading books, easy day. Working where you can go into work and get fired and then not have a means to provide for yourself, that's pretty high stress. So, that lack of being challenged and my frustration at work led me to just sort of quit everything. And then I found a job that I thought was going to be the answer to everything, and then it fell through. And then my family expressed concern for they thought I was on this one like gas station drug, which I think I'll leave a description video about someone who went into like the effects of it. But what was interesting to me is I thought the entire time that my family was losing their mind because I was in my way off of it at the time. And so there was this sort of like everyone saying they're concerned for me, and at the same time I was like, where was this concern when I was actually like, you know, doing stuff? But that being said, you know, obviously that's not me. This is the internet and everyone is telling jokes on here. No one would be crazy enough to do something like go on the internet and tell the truth in the year of our Lord and Savior 2026. That'd be wild. Anyway, 12 years ago, my life fell apart. I had been living in Texas, and then finally, after like, you know, a long amount of driving, my Kia Rio just died out on me, and I wasn't making enough money to really support myself, but I was getting by, but not enough for a broken car to not keep me down. So I had to move back in with my family in Washington, and I felt like a little bit of a failure. But 13 years ago, I didn't care what the world had to say. I was gonna forge a path of my own because college might not have worked out, but I was on my way to make it in the big world. And I was working a restaurant job, and I said, take this job and shove it. I'm moving to Texas to live with my brother. And then I lived with my brother for a little bit, and then he complained about charging me too little bit of rent when I was living on an air mattress in his dining room. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna be woken up at 3 in the morning to you and your friends drinking and playing games in your living room, and then be asked to be paying the amount I could be paying for an apartment of my own. So then I went and got an apartment of my own because I was gonna make it in the world no matter what. And well, I guess you go to the year before that, and 14 years ago, my life fell apart because I was getting ready to graduate. I finished high school, and everything was good, and I got started in school, and I started going to school, and school was just a little bit harder at the university level than I had anticipated, being, you know, a gifted kid, so I didn't have to work in high school. And then got to college, and all of a sudden they're asking me to do shit, and well, would I have a lesson to learn after I dropped out of college? But before I dropped out, I met someone, and that is where the funniest thing happened, because I had come out as a woman living in a man's body at the time, and it is the first time I had ever come out in my life. And to this person, they were a man living in a woman's body, and so we had this wonderful synergy with one another, and we took a philosophy class, and we sort of felt these things in our youth with one another that were incredible, and this jubilance came about in these very brief moments. And I remember one promise I had made to that person, that I would never join the military because they were worried that if I joined the military, I would forget who I was. And that's what's wild is, nope, a little bit stronger than what the military had, so. It was funny to me though, because someone did kind of let me know that the military probably wasn't the place for me. And for many years, I held on to that promise, thinking it meant so much more than what it was, because all it was just a moment with someone. But to me, it was something bigger. And I think in hindsight, it's fun remembering that every moment we have is archived, and then from that archive, we view it from a point in time, and every time we view it, we draw a different path through this three-dimensional space within our mind. And is there electromagnetic rays floating around and bouncing like we're an antenna inside? Maybe, that'd be kind of cool. I think it'd be dope, just because it would help me understand myself a little bit better. But at the end of the day, that's all I really want to do, is understand what it is we're here to do. Because there's no way that the world was made so that we could come here and then just watch people bigger than us bully people all over the place. And then the amount of hate some people carry is just wild for how beautiful the world is. So perhaps the greatest joke of all was the life we lived along the way. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Thank you for letting me share. And I'm excited to see you in the next one. Who knows what it's gonna be about? Anyway, love you. Bye.